All right, just as we're starting up here, guys, go and check the video on my channel, which shows the speaker making a ruling just not even 20 minutes ago about how Pierre has to apologize. Otherwise, he's going to be banned from question period today. He's not going to be able to ask any questions. He's not going to be recognized. And this is Pierre just speaking before question period here, speaking to reporters. So let's hear what he's got to say.
Pris le terrorisme pour le Canada que nous connaissons et le Canada que nous aimons. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. As you know, the House of Commons is paralyzed today, again, I think for the 7th day, after Justin Trudeau refused the Speaker's order to hand over evidence to the police in a $400 million scandal. A scandal involving 186 conflicts of interest, wherein Liberal appointees gave money, Canadian tax dollars, to their own companies. There must be something really damaging in all these documents Trudeau is covering up for him to shut down the House's businesses for 7 days in order to prevent the police from getting their hands on him. It's just another reminder that after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, everything is broken. He's not worth the crime, the cost, and the corruption. Housing costs have doubled. The cost of food has driven 2 million people to the food bank. Our economy is the fastest shrinking in the G7. Right now, the average American makes 50% more than the average Canadian, the worst gap between our two countries in Canadian history. Food price inflation has been 36% higher in Canada than in the U.S., something that the food professor Sylvain Charlebois attributes directly to the carbon tax, which, and there the news gets even worse, Trudeau wants to quadruple to 61 cents a litre, which will grind our economy to a halt. Factories won't get their parts, grocery stores won't get their food, workers won't get their paychecks. It will be like a nuclear winter for our economy if this quadrupling carbon tax goes ahead. And that's why common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime after the carbon tax election. But worse than anything else is what we see in our streets today. What has happened to our country? The division, the violence, the hate, the danger, the anti-Semitism that we've never seen before in this country. Now, it's easy to blame the firebombing of synagogues, the hateful genocidal protests, protest chants in front of Jewish businesses, homes, and hospitals as simply a reaction to a conflict in the Middle East. Doesn't make sense. First, hate crime was up over 100% before October 7th. And second, this is not the first time there's been a conflict in the Middle East. There was the war of 1967, and then there was the Yom Kippur War in 73. There were 2 intifadas. There was the war against Hezbollah in 2006. There was the operation against Hamas in 2014. We never saw that violence spill onto our streets. We didn't see people bring those hatreds into Canada. But after 9 years of Trudeau's radical ideology, his deliberate attempts to divide people into groups, his reckless destruction of our border security, letting in 2 ISIS terrorists, one apparently videotaped mutilating a human body on a crucifix and subsequently making that person a citizen. These kinds of reckless policies and the actions of this government, the refusal to condemn these remarks. Just yesterday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs did something unbelievable on the floor of the House of Commons. I read the genocidal comments that have been made by these radical mobs, and I said, would you just condemn it? From the river to the sea, she wouldn't condemn that. Israel will soon be gone. She wouldn't condemn that. There's only one solution, intifada, revolution. She wouldn't condemn that. She wouldn't even affirm Israel's right to retaliate against other countries attacking it. She should apologize. A foreign affairs minister in Canada should find it very easy to condemn those kinds of remarks, but she didn't because she's pandering politically, which is what Justin Trudeau has been doing for the last 9 years. Today, we see that on our streets, the organization Samadoun, which is a front for the PFLP, has been fomenting these violent and horrific protests and mob actions. This organization is a front for an already banned terrorist group, and it is an offense under Section 83.5 of the Criminal Code, as enacted by the Anti-Terrorism Act, to knowingly act on behalf of, at the direction of, or in association with a terrorist entity. Specifically, Samadoun's founder, Khalid Barakat, has been described by the Israeli government as a high-ranking member of the PFLP. The PFLP has been placed on the list of banned Canadian terrorist entities for 20 years. In 2021, the Israeli Ministry of National Defense designated Samadoun as an organization that is a subsidiary of the PFLP. Germany banned the Samadoun, saying that it served as an international network which disseminates anti-Israel and anti-Jewish propaganda and supported and glorified various foreign terrorist organizations, including Hamas. Samadoun's leadership was deported from Germany, refused entry into the EU in 2022, and both times they were returned and, of course, welcomed to Canada. In 2019, PayPal, DonorBox, and Plaid shut out online donations to Samadoun due to its alleged links to the PFLP, following an incident in June where the PFLP issued an official statement of gratitude to Samadoun for its support of its prisoners. And Samadoun's Canadian leader, Charlotte Cates, has traveled to Iran and appeared on state TV, where she described Hamas's actions of October 7th as brave and heroic. Her organization has gone on to make numerous glorifications of October the 7th, specifically saying, this was what she said, her group said yesterday, "Long live October 7th. October 7th, the inception of the Al-Aqsa flood, the day that made clear to the world that Palestinian people and their armed resistance can and will liberate Palestine, and that the entire region will be free of Zionism and imperialism. The great flood toward liberation." On October 7th, 2023, Mohammed Deif, commander of the Al-Qassam brigades and the Palestinian resistance, said, "Today, the people reclaim their revolution, correct their path, and return to the march and return to the march of return." And finally, yesterday, the organization chanted in our streets, in Canadian streets, "Death to Canada, death to the United States, and death to Israel." So this is a terrorist organization. Common sense conservatives are calling for the government under Section 83.03 of the Criminal Code to ban Samadoun now. And let's bring home safety and security and peace to our streets. Let's unify our people. Let's end the crime by locking up the dangerous, repeat offenders. Let's secure our borders. Let's keep terrorists out of our country. And let's stand up for what's right once again. Stand with our allies against terrorism and for decency. Let's bring home the country that we knew and still love. Thank you.
À propos des demandes de documents que vous avez préparées en Chambre, même les gens de la GRC disent on n'en a pas besoin. Est-ce que ce ne serait pas le moment d'envoyer tout ça à Proc?
C'est pas clair ce que vous dites. Moi, je crois que si les GRC n'en ont pas besoin, ils peuvent l'ignorer. On dit que simplement les policiers devraient les avoir, et c'est la GRC qui
ne pourrait pas tomber dans l'extrême.
Appel à la violence, mettre
conventional war between Iran and Israel, and do you not agree with Joe Biden and his assessment?
I think the idea of allowing a genocidal, theocratic, unstable dictatorship that is desperate to avoid being overthrown by its own people to develop nuclear weapons is about the most dangerous and irresponsible thing that the world could ever allow. And if Israel were to stop that genocidal, theocratic, unstable government from acquiring nuclear weapons, it would be a gift by the Jewish state to humanity.
Earlier today, Chrystia Freeland said that she'd be willing to work with the Conservatives to pass any legislation referencing backtrack COVID where the two parties work together. Are there any priorities which you actually share with the Liberals where you could see the two parties working together to pass something?
What do you think? You seen anything good they're doing lately? By the way, I was very rude. I have an incredible team here. I want to point them out here. We have Don Stewart, who's been fighting against the crime, fighting to defend the Jewish community against anti-Semitism, a great businessman who understands how we can fix the budget. We have Raquel Dancho, who has been fighting for safe streets as our lead on matters of public safety, and a great voice for Manitoba. We have our great heroine and deputy leader, Melissa Lanceman, who, in addition to doing a terrific job in all of her roles, she helped this guy put his kippah on properly so it didn't fall off yesterday. So thank you for that. And she is leading the charge on literally every single file. And then we have, of course, Marty Morantz, a member of Parliament and Associate Finance Shadow Minister, who was the very first. I know all of you have been giving me credit for pointing out inflation would follow money printing. It was actually Marty Morantz. So please give Marty a round of applause, everybody. Well, you're asking me on, look, what is their policy? They've doubled the debt, they've doubled housing costs, they've given us the worst inflation in 40 years. They would have to do exactly the opposite of everything they've done to fix all the problems that they've caused. What I'm saying is, let's axe the carbon tax to bring down gas, heat, and groceries rather than quadrupling the tax to 61 cents a litre. I would work with her on axing the carbon tax. I would allow her to take my private member's bill that will build the homes by removing bureaucracy to get building. I would allow the government to take my entire plan to cap government spending with a dollar for dollar law to bring down the deficit, inflation, and interest rates, and I would allow them to take my plan to stop the crime with jail, not bail, stronger borders, and not banning hunting rifles, and treatment rather than unsafe supply so we can bring our loved ones home drug-free. So take those. So
why not just
I'm just finishing the question. If you take those ideas, axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, to Chrystia Freeland, let me know what she says.
You can't do any of that until this current debate is dispensed with. So why not just agree to send it to the committee like the Speaker has suggested? The RCMP says it already has some of these documents. Why continue to buy the government more time with keeping the House of Commons in stasis? You can't bring up your confidence motions.
It's been months now since the Auditor General revealed a $400 million spending scandal involving 186 incidences of conflict of interest where Liberal appointees gave tax dollars to their own companies. $400 million is a lot of money for the single moms who can't afford groceries, the seniors who can't afford rent. We're not just going to let $400 million of corruption be swept under the rug so Justin Trudeau can get on with his day. So we say, let's end this now. Let's get Parliament back to work by handing over the documents to the police so we can bring home accountability. Thank you.
Okay, let's get to Parliament. They're about to start statements.
Energy sector before it even begun. Madam Speaker, Nova Scotia have won. Spill C49 is now law, and we are one step closer to being a world energy leader in green energy production.
I want to remind members we are in session. There are statements going on. If individuals are not interested in those statements, I would ask them to step out and have their conversations there. J'espère que c'est bien compris.
I hope that this has been clearly understood by all members. The honourable member for Oxford.
So much to be grateful for in Oxford, especially our incredible farmers who are working hard on the fall harvest.
That's right.
Oxford farmers are some of the toughest and best farmers we have in Canada. They're the backbone of our community, rising early and working late hours to ensure food makes its way from their fields to our forks. As the proud dairy capital of Canada, Oxford leads the way with the thriving agritourism, food production, and cheese industry that fuels our tables and our economy. As farmers face higher farming costs, including input cost and more red tape from this Liberal government, Conservatives will be partners with our farmers so we can make more, grow more, produce more, and harvest more right here in Canada. So this Thanksgiving, let's thank these men and women who risk and sacrifice so much to feed our families, and above all, let's thank God for the farmer. Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Sackville, Chesterton.
Economy, especially in Nova Scotia. That is why we passed Bill C-49, which enables the creation of offshore wind projects in Atlantic Canada for the very first time. This bill alone will attract billions in investment and create thousands of jobs for Atlantic Canadians. That is why I was so deeply disturbed to see the Conservative Party turn their backs on Nova Scotians once again by opposing legislation to attempt to stop these jobs, stop economic growth, stop renewable energy projects from coming home right to Nova Scotia. Fortunately, the Conservative failed, and we delivered.
Did I fix it? I think I fixed it.
This bill is over and above all the other bills that we have passed for clean energy. Thanks to these investments, we're going to fight climate change.
Good job, buddy. Good job.
The honourable member for Beauport-Limoilou. Madam Speaker, it is with great pride that I am underscoring the 35th anniversary of the Beauport Community Development Corporation. The CDC Beauport allows all of its member organizations to cooperate to improve the quality of life of its citizens, in particular the most vulnerable, by showing their dedication, commitment, and knowledge. Whether it be fighting poverty, supporting families, or taking mental health initiatives, CDC Beauport is a pillar of our community. Jacques Bellemare, the Director General of CDC Beauport, deserves all our admiration. He is determined, courageous, an unprecedented diplomat with a good sense of humor. He is a real leader for this organization. Thank you to all the volunteers and all the employees throughout the years. Thank you. You make the difference in fighting poverty, supporting families, and ensuring mental health. Thank you for being among us, for us, day after day. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Labrador.
Speaker, when I sat in the Newfoundland and Labrador legislature with Premier Danny Williams, I remember when he had to go to Ottawa to fight day in and day out against the Conservative Harper government, who tried to rip up the Atlantic Accord, an historic agreement which has delivered jobs and prosperity in our province for generations. And now, over the last year here in the House of Commons, I had to fight day in and day out with my Liberal colleagues against the Conservatives again, who tried to rip up the Atlantic Accord and kill Bill C-49. For the last year, the Conservatives have stood against the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, the people of Nova Scotia, while we fought for them, so we could deliver on the promise of the Atlantic Accord and the enormous opportunities of Bill C-49. Madam Speaker, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have led the offshore oil sector. We will lead the offshore green energy sector, and we will do it without the support of the Conservative government.
Again, there were individuals that were not being very respectful during that statement, and I would ask them that to please afford the respect. Yes, some of them are recidivists in that respect.
Oh, what just happened? Parliament just... Sorry about that. That wasn't me. That was Parliament.
Negligent in his handling of
I tried to fix it as quick as I could.
Jasper wildfire, a fire that cost $1 billion, destroyed a third of Jasper, and has resulted in 40% of town residents being left homeless. The minister was repeatedly warned that Jasper was a tinderbox, and yet, in the face of that, his officials canceled prescribed burns out of concern for political optics. This is scandalous. When the fire began, the minister obstructed the ability of the Alberta government to participate in the response. Proper infrastructure wasn't in place, and more than 50 firefighters were turned away as Jasper burned. Failure after failure after failure under this minister's watch. He has a lot to answer for.
The honourable member for Dartmouth, Cole Harbour.
Madam Speaker, Nova Scotians are smart, passionate, hard-working people. Nova Scotians are seizing our strong winds, turning them into big revenue that will drive our economy and produce good jobs for generations to come. Unlike the Conservatives, we believe that Nova Scotians should reap the rewards of the multi-trillion-dollar offshore wind and clean hydrogen industries. That's why the passage of Bill C-49 represents a huge step for Nova Scotians and Atlantic Canadians, unlocking a generational economic opportunity for our region. But just like the Harper Conservatives of the past, who tried to push Atlantic Canada down by trying to take our offshore revenues, Conservatives are doing it again, trying to do everything they can to block this huge opportunity for Atlantic Canadians. Terrible. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, we won't let them.
Oh, come on.
We're push Atlantic Canada down by trying to take our offshore revenues. Conservatives are doing it again, trying to do everything they can to block this huge opportunity for Atlantic Canadians. Terrible. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, we won't let them. We're standing up for Nova Scotians and we're standing up for Atlantic Canadians because of our hardworking people deserve to prosper.
They got to get their feed right today. The Parliament feed is awful.
From St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the offshore wind industry is expected to attract $1 trillion in investment by 2040. And with the passing of Bill C-49, Newfoundland and Labrador is poised to lead the way. Just like it did for our oil and gas sector, the Atlantic Accord will now ensure we are the beneficiaries of our wind resources. And that means thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in investment. While Conservatives voted against Bill C-49 every step of the way, we believe in the future of wind. We understand the energy market is diversifying. We support strong and prosperous economy for Newfoundland and Labrador. I will always stand up for Newfoundland and Labrador's future. And with Bill C-49, it is looking even brighter.
Yes, good job.
The honourable member from Kenora.
Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and what should be a time of joy, family, and celebration is unfortunately become a stark reminder of the economic pain that this government has caused, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are struggling to afford essentials, and that includes food. In fact, 2 million Canadians are visiting a food bank in a single month. The food banks across Northwest Ontario are running out of supplies because demand is so high, and Canadians are paying $700 more for groceries this year than they did in 2023. And we know that the NDP Liberal coalition will in fact quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre if they are given the opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, as Canadian families gather for the Thanksgiving weekend, they should know that only common sense Conservatives have a plan to axe the carbon tax, to bring down the cost of food and ensure that all Canadians across this country can afford to feed, heat, and house themselves once again.
Yeah, way to go, Eric. The honourable member from Sydney, Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, I have tremendous news for the people of Cape Breton. Bill C-49, our offshore wind bill, is now law. Expanding on the historical Atlantic Accords, we have delivered groundbreaking legislation that will enable the construction of offshore renewable energy in Atlantic Canada. While support for this legislation was unanimous in the Nova Scotia provincial legislation, the federal Conservative leader shamefully directed his party to oppose countless jobs, billions of dollars worth in investments for sustainable growth. Bill C-49 sought input from Indigenous stakeholders, local businesses, the fisheries, and environmental advocacy groups to improve and pass this important legislation. It's a shame that no Atlantic Conservative member was brave enough to stand up to their leader, but on this side of the House, we will continue to fight for our environment, build economies of the future, and continue to advocate for Atlantic jobs.
The honourable member from Calgary Centre.
More proof that this NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Mr. Speaker, you have ruled that the NDP Liberal government violated a House order to turn over evidence for a criminal investigation into their latest $400 million scandal, effectively obstructing justice. The refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed this House, sidelining our efforts to address skyrocketing housing costs, food inflation, and rampant crime. This is the latest in a litany of financial scandals with this government. The Auditor General's investigation revealed the Liberal appointees at SDTC funneled nearly $400 million taxpayer dollars to their own companies with over 186 conflicts of interest, while Canadians struggle to afford basic necessities. Will the NDP Liberal government end this cover-up, hand over the evidence to the police, and let Parliament get back to work for Canadians?
That's right. The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
Brianna McDonald, a vibrant, intelligent 13-year-old girl, was abandoned by a system that should have provided mental health care, that should have provided addiction care, that should have provided her with the care she so desperately needed to help her overcome her demons. The system failed Brianna. On August 23rd, Brianna was found unresponsive. She died by overdose, alone in a tent in a homeless encampment in Abbotsford, BC. Instead of providing her with the care she needed, she was given needles and taught how to use them. Brianna had just turned 13. Did the Prime Minister call? No. Did the Minister of Health and Mental Health call? No. Brianna's parents are in Ottawa today. What does the Prime Minister have to say now to the parents who, because of his failed radical drug policies, will never see their daughter again?
Wow. That's sad.
The honourable member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, the hydrogen industry in Canada is expected to be worth $12 trillion by 2050 and help create more than 350,000 Canadian jobs, all the while helping us fight climate change. Together with provinces, Canada's allies, industry, and organizations like the Canadian Hydrogen Association, Canada will succeed from this enormous economic opportunity. Canada is making strides with the National Hydrogen Strategy, Hydrogen Investment Tax Credits, and Bill C-49, the Atlantic Accords Amendments Act. By leveraging our world-class offshore wind resources, we're positioning ourselves as a leading clean energy supplier while boosting our economy and creating thousands of jobs. This summer, I witnessed a game changer at Canada's first operational fuel station for Class 8 hydrogen trucks. Thanks to ITD Industries, Walmart Canada, Nikola Motor, they're transforming the trucking industry with lower maintenance and fuel costs, an impressive range of over 800 kilometers, and best of all, zero emissions. Mr. Speaker, let's all embrace the hydrogen opportunity. It's both a win for Canada's economy and our environment. Thank you.
The honourable member from South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, the third State of Canada's Birds Report was released today by Birds Canada and Environment Canada. Birds are literally the canaries in the coal mine for our environmental health, and previous reports in 2012 and 2019 raised some serious red flags. Today's report shows that some of those concerns are getting worse. For instance, grassland birds have declined by 2/3 since 1970, so something is clearly going wrong in our grasslands. But these reports also show that when we know what's going wrong and we have the political will to fix it, we can see dramatically positive results. Hawks, eagles, falcons have increased by 1/3 since 1970 because we banned DDT. Waterfowl have also increased because we started conserving their habitats. We know all this about bird populations because of the thousands of talented volunteers who go out every day to count birds. These citizen scientists have given us an incredibly powerful measure of the health of our forests, grasslands, and waters. Thank you.
What's this guy about to cry over some birds? Is he good?
The Honourable Member Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, on October 18th, we'll be underscoring the Night of the Homeless. Once again, we will get together to lift the veil on this reality that affects too many people. This year's theme is the 100 Faces of Homelessness, which highlights the different backgrounds, paths, and human beings that are hidden behind this misunderstood word. There is no one facet of homelessness. It can be a young person who ran away from an unstable home, an isolated elderly person who has been forgotten by society, a vulnerable worker who can't make ends meet, or someone suffering from mental health or addiction. Behind each glance, there is a human being with dreams, hopes, and a will to find meaning in life. The Night of the Homeless is more than an event. It's a reminder of our collective responsibility because behind each face, there is a real person, a story that deserves to be heard, and a respected, and supported. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the evidence is clear. Sami Doon, also known as the Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, is knowingly acting on behalf of, at the direction of, and in association with at least one listed terrorist entity under the Criminal Code, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Sami Doon is based in Canada and incorporated as a not-for-profit under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. Other jurisdictions have taken action. Germany and Israel have listed Sami Doon as a terrorist entity, and the European Union has banned them from entry. The Liberal government needs to take terrorism seriously, needs to take anti-Semitism seriously, needs to take the evidence seriously, and list Sami Doon as an entity under the Criminal Code of Canada for terrorism.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. All right, Pierre's in the house, isn't he? Yeah.
The
I can't see.
member from Northwest Territories.
I can't see if
Mr.
he's in
Speaker,
the house yet.
I'd like to welcome the members of the Northwest Territories Council of Leaders to Ottawa this week. This collaboration of both the territorial and Indigenous governments is a forum for cooperation and collaboration on shared priorities. While these leaders represent different levels of government and different regions, they are coming together for the same reason, to build a better future for northern communities. This council is meeting with federal ministers and officials in Ottawa to highlight and advocate for the interests of NBTers. These include advancing reconciliation and modern treaties, protecting our environment while sustainably developing our economy, and building necessary infrastructure like the Mackenzie Valley Highway. Again, welcome to the council leaders, and I look forward to their continued progress in advancing northern priorities. Thank you. Message from Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable
The honourable member.
Thornhill.
$100 million Liberal
Wow, so Pierre
scandal
didn't even
has
show up.
paralyzed Parliament for a week. Mr. Speaker, you yourself ruled that the NDP Liberals have violated a House order to turn over evidence to the police for a criminal investigation into their corruption. They are defying your ruling, and they have grinded this place to a halt. The auditor said that there's $400 million tax dollars and 186 conflicts of interest in questions. Canadians can get accountability today if they hand over the documents to the police. So what's in those documents, and how bad is it?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I want to start by noting the events in Vancouver yesterday at a protest. We unequivocally condemn those events and those actions. It is absolutely unacceptable to burn the Canadian flag and to chant "Death to Canada." It is also unacceptable to
Then
deny
do something about it.
and celebrate the events of October 7th and to champion the acts of a terrorist group. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Glad that they found the courage to condemn something in this House, but whatever is in those documents, back to the matter at hand that I asked about, must be really bad if they're willing to hide the corruption. Months ago, the Auditor General found that the Liberal appointees gave nearly $400 million tax dollars to their own companies, 186 conflict of interest. I'll ask again for the 7th day in a row, will the NDP Liberals end the cover-up, give proof to the police so we can get accountability for the corruption and get Parliament back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important I read your ruling into the record because the Conservatives didn't hear it the first time. The Chair, that's you, Mr. Speaker, is of the view that it would be valuable to afford an opportunity for the concerns expressed by the RCMP as well as by the Auditor General to be addressed fully, and I would hope for a mutually satisfactory solution to be arrived at. I believe the best way for this to be achieved would be to follow the usual course for a prima facie question of privilege, that is a referral to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. We're ready to send this matter to committee. When will the Conservatives do that?
Just going to ask all members, please, not to take the floor unless they've been recognized by the Chair. The honourable member from Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the House Leader missed the part where you told them that they're holding this House in contempt. If there is nothing to hide in those documents, then they should be able to hand them over. $400 million to Liberal friends, 186 conflicts of interest from a government that knows really well what a conflict of interest is, all while a record number of Canadians can't afford to eat. How bad are these documents that they would hold this place up for 7 days, defying your order, and to hide the $400 million that they gave to their friends?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're ready for this matter to move on to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, just as you ruled. The only party that doesn't want that to happen are the Conservatives. They're trying to spin out of their own obstruction because they don't want this to go to committee, because what they will hear is expert after expert talking about the egregious abuse of power that the Conservatives are trying to do in this place to override the rights of Canadians. We're ready to move forward, Mr. Speaker. It's only the Conservatives that are afraid of a vote. Thank you.
The honourable member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, in La Presse today, Surgeon Vincent Moore of the Montreal Police Eclipse Squad deplores the fact that gang members are using firearms without fear of consequences. He says, "It's gone completely crazy. I've never seen anything like it in my 18-year career. Nowadays, it's not uncommon for someone to be arrested, and they say, well, it doesn't matter because they'll let me off with just a piece of paper and I'll do it again. They're no longer afraid of being arrested by the police because they know there'll be no consequences. Why have this PM and the Bloc allowed criminals to rule our communities?" The Honourable Minister of Justice. I appreciate the question because it gives me the opportunity to underscore what we've done.
Nice suit
with respect to firearms, we've invested roughly $400 million against guns and gangs. Was the Conservatives, like the member across the way, voted against? With respect to administration of justice, yes, there is an issue with bail conditions. When we look at bail, we have to verify if the Crown is contesting it, if there's enough room in detention centres. It's a good question to speak to Legault about. The Honourable Member for Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice has blamed the Quebec Premier on 2 times for something they changed, that the federal government changed, and that's why this legislation is causing so much issues in Quebec. And the Sergeant Guiguerre of Montreal Police said that people are saying, before this ruling, people on the street would tell us they didn't want to go to jail for long, but now they're getting arrested for guns, and soon after they're back on the street. Why is the government not changing its laws? Because they're crippling enforcement. The Honourable Minister of Justice. First thing, the C-75 has increased sentences for car theft, which he voted against. Second thing, people who decide with respect to bail are judges and justices of the peace who are appointed by who? Mr. Legault. So if you have any problem with respect to that, the administration of justice, you have to speak with Mr. Legault in terms of space in courts and detention centres, and perhaps some issues with rulings they've made as well. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, enough time has wasted for farmers. All parties voted in favour of Bill C-282 on June 21st, 2023. It was sent to the Senate over a year ago. There is one clause. They've been studying one clause for over a year, all because 2 unelected senators, Paul Bohm and Peter Harder, are dithering because they disagree. 2 non-elected individuals want to overturn the vote of elected representatives from all these parties. They were appointed by the Liberals, who in the Liberal government is going to explain democracy to their 2 friends in the Senate. The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I can assure you that we agree entirely with respect to this question with the Bloc. Supply management is very important to our country, particularly important for how we occupy our lands. We want to be there to support our farmers. And yes, we do expect the Senate to work diligently on this issue and to be sent back as quickly as possible. Thank you. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. C-282 Well, all parties voted in favor of it. This is the second time we've tabled this bill. We've been studying it from all angles since 2020. Remember, we're talking about one clause, and even the Holy Scriptures haven't been scrutinized like this. And now there are 2 senators who think that we're all fools and want to overturn the vote of 338 elected representatives of the people. Enough is enough. Will the Liberals ask their 2 friends to stop blocking democracy? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As you know, we made a big decision as a government to ensure that the Senate to be independent. And since we've done this 9 years ago, we've appointed senators that are independent. I think it's a concept that the Bloc should understand, independence.
Alors, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby. Finding affordable housing is harder than ever for people across the country. But we've just learned that big property owners use AI software. They've had a secret agreement to increase rents. The NDP tabled a motion to get to the bottom of this story, and the Liberals and the Conservatives blocked this motion. It's shameful. Canadians cannot find affordable housing. So why are the Liberals and the Conservatives profiting big property owners instead of protecting people? The Honourable Minister of Housing. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows full well, it's essential to invest and not just identify challenges. On this side of the House, it's important to advance investment for building affordable housing. It's essential to support communities as well.
Investments to actually get homes built, not simply point fingers and try to identify problems with no solutions coming forward.
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
The Housing Minister needs to tell his members to stop blocking the presence of these CEOs in committee. For Canadians who rent, finding a home they can afford is nearly impossible, and these rich corporate landlords are using artificial intelligence software to potentially collude and jack up rents.
Shame.
The NDP proposed a study to expose rent gouging, but the Liberals and Conservatives teamed up and blocked it.
Shame.
Canadians
Shame.
deserve a government that protects them. So why are the Liberals, along with the Conservatives, continuing to protect profits of corporate landlords over renters struggling to find a home?
Good question. Once again, I'm going to encourage all members not to take the floor unless they're recognized. Includes the Honourable Member from New Westminster Burnaby. The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague with the NDP has suggested for the Minister to tell my colleagues what to do at committee. On this side of the House, I can tell you it's my colleagues who tell me to increase investments to build more affordable housing. The NDP have made a point to point out where there may be some challenges where I actually agree that we need to address. The difference is on our side of the House, we actually are advancing solutions to address them. We are putting billions of dollars on the table to build more affordable housing, to build more cooperative housing, and to help nonprofits buy up that low-cost housing on the market to keep it affordable forever. If the NDP want to turn their mind to solutions, I'll listen. Until then, I'm going to continue acting.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
The Liberal government is violating a parliamentary order to hand over evidence to the RCMP. At issue is the Auditor General's findings that officials at SDTC broke conflict of interest laws 186 times and funneled $400 million of taxpayers' money into their own companies. All this at a time when Canadians can barely afford to eat or heat and house themselves. Now, by refusing to accept your ruling, they have effectively paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside all other work to address the housing crisis, the inflation crisis, and the crime crisis this government unleashed. Why not end the cover-up, hold the lawbreakers to account, and let Parliament get back to work?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
False, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that member sat in your chair at one point, and I think he would have an interesting perspective if the opposition was not following his ruling as he is doing. I quote, and I repeat, What you said, Mr. Speaker, is I believe the best way for this to be achieved would be to follow the usual course of a prima facie question of privilege, that is, a referral to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. The government is willing to do that. We're willing to vote in favour of it. The only party that is holding Parliament up are the Conservatives because they don't want the truth out there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to ask the honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's, please, not to take the floor unless recognized. The honourable member. Order. The honourable member from Regina Capel.
If she scrolled up just a little bit more on your ruling on the website, Mr. Speaker, she would see where you ruled that withholding evidence after a parliamentary production order is a contempt of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about Liberal insiders funneling cash into their own pockets. Why don't they want to get to the bottom of this? Yeah. And while Conservatives are putting forward real solutions to lower taxes, to make housing more affordable, and to end the crime wave that this Prime Minister unleashed, this government is going to great lengths to keep this information hidden. They're effectively obstructing justice. Why not let Parliament get back to work and hand over the evidence to the RCMP?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not even sure the House Leader of the Opposition believes his own spin. Like, he could scroll down a little bit and see what you asked of him, which was to prepare a motion that you said you would accept to send it to committee to be studied. Mr. Speaker, we welcome that. We will get this studied. Let's get this out of the House. But there's only one group of MPs that don't want that to happen, because what will come out is they are trying to abuse the extraordinary powers of this place, override the rights of Canadians, and get rid of police independence. Mr. Speaker, that's not acceptable.
You're not
the honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Look, this is a case of $400 million and 186 conflicts of interest that are benefiting Liberal insiders lining their pockets while Canadians are lined up at food banks. The response from the government to a parliamentary order to produce the documents is, first of all, to break the order so that they can bury it at committee, while Conservatives want to make sure that this corruption, this scandal, sees the full daylight that it's deserved, and a referral to Canada's Royal Canadian Mounted Police so they can decide to take a criminal investigation. Oh, wait, we've learned that they are already investigating the latest corruption with these Liberals. Will they turn over the documents today?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, your ruling was very clear. Send this to committee. There's only one group of MPs that are afraid of that going to committee, and we are prepared to vote on that, Mr. Speaker. Let's send it to committee. Let's have that debate. The only group of MPs that are obstructing their own obstruction, because they don't actually want to help Canadians. All they want to do is serve themselves and their own partisan interests. Mr. Speaker, let's get this out of the House. Let's get it to committee so that we can get back to the important work of serving Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
She wants to get it out of the House. She wants to get it out of the sunlight, the daylight. They want to bury it at committee. They don't want Canadians to know about the latest example of Liberal corruption. We see that conflicts of interest are very common over there. That Prime Minister broke the law twice. The Public Safety Minister broke the law. The Trade Minister broke the law. The Liberal appointed chair of this Green Slush Fund broke the law. Every time these Liberals get a chance, they enrich their friends. They want to hide it from Canadians. Conservatives want to get the truth. We want to get accountability, and we want Parliament to be able to get back to work for Canadians. Will they turn over the documents today?
Yeah. Order. The Honourable Member from the Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We already have the bloc, but now we learn we have the blocker-in-chief, the Conservative, Mr. Speaker. How ridiculous for Canadians watching at home. They are blocking their own motion, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine that? The Conservative are blocking their own motion. Mr. Speaker, we know the Conservative know how to count to 6, so let me explain to them. There's not been one report. There's not been 2 reports. There's not been 3 reports. There's been 4 independent reports, Mr. Speaker, to go to the bottom of this, Mr. Speaker. We got to the bottom of this. Let's get back to work and then expect better from all of us.
Man, the screen keeps freezing today. It's done that 3 times. He yelled too loud and stopped the camera.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, according to one senior civil servant, there's a lot of negligence and laziness, and there's also sheer incompetence, and the situation is simply unsustainable. And the SDTC activities are almost at the level of the sponsorship scandal when it comes to the allocation of funds. Canadians' tax dollars are being squandered without consideration, and nothing's being done on the other side of the House to remedy the situation. Will this Liberal government deal with this scandal as quickly as possible? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are waking up as if this was news. We took action quickly and decisively, Mr. Speaker. Not only was there one report, there were 4 presented, 2 by a national law firm and others. We investigated, we took action, and it is time, Mr. Speaker, for this Parliament to resume its work in the interest of all Canadians. Thank you. The Honourable Minister for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, in the Green Slush Fund scandal, the government is openly refusing to provide the documents required for the RCMP to investigate corruption at SDTC, where the Liberals allowed their friends to benefit from taxpayers' dollars, as uncovered by the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, will the Liberals put an end to the cover-ups and provide the police with the evidence so that the Parliament can work in the interest of all Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let's be very clear. My colleague has already clearly explained this, but since we're talking about the RCMP, allow me to provide a comment from the Commissioner. I'd like to underscore that the RCMP is operationally independent, and it respects the independence of the police force. This principle guarantees that the government cannot direct or influence the enforcement of law, and that includes members of this House. The Honourable Member for Shefford. All age groups, 79% of the population are in favour of increasing old age security. 79%. Regardless of your age. You don't have to be between 65 and 74. Everyone agrees. Why is that? Because people respect their elders, because the world shows solidarity, and if we can improve the living conditions of those who need it, well, we're all for it. Even in the chamber, we agree, except the Liberals. When will they listen to reason, show they have a heart, and give C319
This chick has new jewelry on every time she's in the
Minister
house. A new necklace
and Seniors.
every time.
Mr. Speaker, the Bloc has never taken one opportunity to support seniors. In terms of the GIS, they voted against it. For dental care, that 14,000 people from Shefford had benefited from. As of today, the Bloc voted against it. For all the housing measures for seniors, the Bloc was against it. When will they say yes to our seniors, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Member for Shefford. Since he was appointed Minister of Seniors, the only achievement of the member for Gatineau has been to turn his back on the 65 to 74 age group. All he's done is play petty politics when it's time to step up to the plate. He's promoting Liberal interests when it's time to think of our collective interest. An old-fashioned politician with no sense of state. It's not too late. He can still act for the common good. Will the minister finally get his act together, drop the partisanship, and give C319 the royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Employment and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, my track record for seniors and all the Liberals from Quebec members, all our achievements, well, we could compare the two, what they've done at the Bloc. They voted against dental care. They voted against the increase in GIS. They voted against for housing investment for seniors. Every time we made a proposal to help Quebec seniors, the VOC rose together against them. The 35 Quebec Liberals from members from Quebec always voted for these measures. The honourable member for Shefford. What's more, the minister offers conspiracy theories to explain why he's no intention of doing anything for seniors. The big bad separatists are preparing a secret plan so you don't get your pensions. Ooh. Old fear-mongering from the 80s. He's talking about winning conditions and independence. So are we. We think that improving seniors' living conditions is a win-win situation and it helps ensure their independence. Instead of scaring people, can the minister get to work for people and give C319 its royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Employment and Seniors. I'd like to tell you, Mr. Speaker, what seniors are afraid of. They're afraid of having their dental care removed, that the thousands of seniors, millions of Canadians have benefited from. And they're wondering, these seniors in Gatineau especially, what the Bloc is doing with the Conservatives in terms of austerity, cutting daycare spots, cutting dental care, cutting health care. The Bloc and the Conservatives, that's the real risk for our seniors and Canadians.
The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
There is so much Liberal corruption that they're covering up their cover-up of the $400 million corruption of the Liberal Green Slush Fund. The Speaker ruled that the NDP Liberals violated a House order to turn the Green Slush Fund documents over to the RCMP for investigation. How much worse is the corruption that the NDP Liberals are refusing to respect the order of the Speaker, pushing aside all the work of doubling the housing costs that the Liberals have done, inflation and crime? We can get back to the business of this House if the NDP Liberals just end the cover-up and turn the documents over to the ICMP. Why won't they?
Yeah. Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, if we're going to be mansplained to, they could at least try and get it right. But the fact of the matter is that you ruled very
make her retract
clearly
that
this matter should go
that's a
to
sexual
the House
comment.
Committee. If the members opposite would like to read your full ruling, they
Or
can
sexist.
go do that, or I can table it
That's what I
in the
meant to
House
say,
for them
sexist.
to read. But I would encourage them to not just cherry pick parts of your ruling, but to actually follow it as opposed to what they're doing. We're happy for this matter to move on, for it to go to committee, for it to be studied. It's only the Conservatives that are holding this place up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Every time I meet with a Liberal, I have to check for my wallet. And they just took $400 million of taxpayer money and funneled it to Liberals in the Green Slush Fund. Why are they ignoring an order of this House? Why are they preventing us from getting to the business of the House, since they won't turn over the documents to the RCMP? If the Prime Minister won't end the cover-up, will at least call a carbon tax election so Canadians can get the Green Slush Fund money back?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, every time I meet a Conservative, I have to search for some semblance of reason. When we talk about what's going on here, let's think about why your ruling said send it back to the committees, Mr. Speaker. Your ruling said that because this has never been done. Because you know what happens normally when you ask for documents in your law enforcement? You go to a court of law. You don't go into a partisan arena such as the House of Commons, because a court of law, a judge, weighs things called charter interests, like your expectation of privacy, like your right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. Those are important considerations. We will stand by them every time.
The honourable member from Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, the latest $400 million scandal from this Liberal government has paralysed Parliament. The Auditor General found 186 conflicts of interest, with close to $400 million handed out to corrupt Liberal insiders, all at a time when Canadians cannot afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. It begs the question, how damning is that evidence that they have grounded Parliament to a halt simply to hide the truth from Canadians?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I enjoy the interventions from the member opposite, but I also appreciate his experience as a former Crown prosecutor who used to work closely with the police. And what he would recollect from his past career is that those police operate independently from him as a former Crown, and certainly independently from politicians. Why do they do that, Mr. Speaker? So that we can have confidence in our institutions in this country. You know who doesn't have confidence? People that live under authoritarian regimes. Instead of emulating authoritarianism, how about you join this side and learn how to fight against it?
Colleagues, please. And ask the honourable member from Wellington Halton Hills, please, not to raise his voice when he is not recognised by the chair. The honourable member. The honourable member from Brantford, Brant.
Speaker, you ruled that the NDP Liberals violated a House order by withholding evidence regarding their $400 million scandal, effectively obstructing justice, to which the Minister of Justice should be aware of. Their refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside all our work to address the doubling of housing costs, food inflation, and the rise in crime and chaos. The time to end the cover-up is now. When will they hand over the documents so that we can get accountability for corruption and get Parliament back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, your ruling was clear to send this matter to committee for further study. The Conservatives don't like that because they'll hear from experts like the former law clerk who says, in my humble opinion, it is an abuse of the powers for this House to use its power to demand and get documents from the government in order to transfer them to a third party that wouldn't otherwise receive them, or to compel the government to give documents to a third party. Mr. Speaker, expert after expert will tell them this is wrong. We are here to stand up for the rights of Canadians every single day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Nunavut.
The Liberals are actively refusing reconciliation and evading their obligations required in the honour of the Crown. This government knew for 7 years that the big dock in Fort Chipewyan is contaminated with cancer-causing substances, and for 7 years they covered it up. Rightfully, families are now worried about their children's health and whether they will lose them to cancer. When will this government uphold the honour of the Crown and work with First Nations to ensure their health and safety?
Hear, hear. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for raising this important point. Safety is my top priority as Minister of Transport. I hear and understand the concerns from the First Nation communities, and it is crucial that remote Northern and Indigenous communities have access to safe and reliable connectivity that they need. I will be continuing to work with the Minister of Indigenous Services on this very important matter. Thank you.
Look at those jewelry on her wrists, on the
right
and left
member
wrist.
from Churchill, Kiwatsinakaski.
Mr. Speaker, we're now over 1,300 days since the Liberals promised to end long-term boil water advisories. But instead of doing that, the Liberals are fighting First Nations in court as we speak. Doing their best.
I'm sorry to interrupt the honourable member. Colleagues, order.
I wonder if the Hansard picked that up.
I'm going to ask the honourable member from Churchill, Kiwatsinakaski, to start her question from the top.
Mr. Speaker, we're now over 1,300 days since the Liberals promised to end boiled water advisories, but instead of doing that, the Liberals are fighting First Nations in court as we speak. Doing their best Stephen Harper impression, they are carrying on years of colonialism and denying First Nations the right to clean drinking water. Shamattawa, the lead plaintiff, is taking on Canada, one of the richest countries in the world, whose Prime Minister travels the world pretending to be a leader in human rights, all the while denying Shamattawa clean water. When will this government stop fighting Shamattawa, Tatasqueyak, and 58 First Nations and deliver clean drinking water?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, since 2015, we've lifted 145 long-term boil water advisories together with First Nations, and we're going to continue till we get the job done. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, that member opposite has an opportunity to help make sure we never return to the situation that we found ourselves in 2015 with Bill C-61 in committee, nearing study. I hope that we'll see a safe passage of that legislation through this House so that no First Nations person ever lives without clean water again.
The Honourable Member from Bonavista Burn Trinity.
Mr. Speaker, in the 1980s, the Government of Canada and the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador came together to sign the historic Atlantic Accord. This agreement created an offshore energy sector in our province, delivering economic opportunity and prosperity for generations of families and communities. Now, this government and the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador came together again to strengthen this accord to kickstart a new offshore renewable energy industry. Bill C-49 has now become law, ensuring that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians can lead the world in offshore wind and clean energy.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because with a strengthened Atlantic Accord, Atlantic Canada is set to become a global leader in wind hydrogen. There are trillions of dollars on the table, Mr. Speaker, and we should all be excited about the good jobs that that's going to create in our region. And think about the kids who now get to see their folks work at home. But the Conservatives spent months blocking C-49. And really, how could the member for Central Coast of Bay, Notre Dame, fight against the best interests of his community? Because Conservatives try to stand in the way of progress. But we get it done. And Atlantic Canada will produce the clean energy that the world wants, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Edmonton, Mill Woods.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up, Mr. Speaker. And now we're dealing with yet another Liberal corruption scandal. The Liberal minister from Edmonton misled Parliamentary Committee when he claimed to have had no contact with his business partner around the time of an alleged $500,000 fraud involving someone named Randy. However, when phone records proved otherwise, he changed his story. Why won't he just come clean about this corruption?
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've stated many times, if a witness goes to committee, we expect that they provide the information that the committee asks of them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Why are they... What?
The Honourable Member from Edmonton, Mill Woods.
Speaker, it's clear from that answer that the corruption cover-up continues. The Liberal minister from Edmonton first said that he did not text with his business partner, but now that there's clear evidence that he did. It is no coincidence that after months of looking into this matter, there is no other Randy who can be identified other than the Liberal minister from Edmonton. In fact, the minister's own business partner even admitted that the only other Randy ever connected to this company is that minister. So when will the minister finally stand up in this place and admit that he broke the law?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've stated, if a witness goes to committee and the committee asks them for information, we believe that that witness should provide the information as requested of them, and we expect as much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Regina, Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. In order to get around the Conflict of Interest Act, the Liberal minister from Edmonton seems to have hired someone known as the other Randy to manage his fraud-ridden medical supply company. Well, just like the other Randy, there should be an other Prime Minister to run this government. When will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election so Canadians can finally have an other Prime Minister?
Hear, hear. Great question.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Speaker, all of us come to this place because we want to serve Canadians. The Liberals on this side of the House want to be able to deliver important measures for them, but we know that we need to be able to earn their trust every single day. What we see from Conservative members of Parliament is that they think they've already won the next election, Mr. Speaker, but that's not how elections work. We all have to have the humility in this place to work hard for Canadians. It's up to Conservatives now to determine whether they want to do that work or whether they don't. Let's get to work. We're ready to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lille, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, you yourself decided that this Liberal government had violated an order of the House to hand over evidence to the police to investigate the latest Liberal scandal involving $400 million. Parliament is completely paralysed by Liberal corruption. Canadians are counting on us to do something about the high cost of living, the crime, and the budget chaos that has been impoverishing them for 9 years. When will this Liberal government stop obstructing justice so that we can finally get back to the work that will help Canadians eat, house themselves, and live in dignity, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, for Canadians tuning in to question period today, they might be wondering why the Conservatives are obsessed with an organization that is no longer operational. The CEO has resigned. The board has resigned. So here's the question today, Mr. Speaker. The issue is that the Conservatives don't like your order. Why not? Maybe in committee we will find out some new things. On this side of the House, we believe in justice, and on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we will always defend democracy. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. We've been hearing a lot about asylum seekers these days. What we hear is not always well thought out, though. This makes us forget the main problem. The number of asylum seekers in Quebec exceeds our intake capacity. We are not able to offer services to these people, and they are living in poverty. And there are provinces that could help them, but they're refusing to help. The only humane way to manage the record influx of asylum seekers is for everyone to do their fair share. And yet, provinces totally refuse to help. The federal government has to take action. This matter is under federal jurisdiction. What is the minister doing right now to get things moving? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees. Mr. Speaker, the member is right. This is an area of shared jurisdiction with the federal government. We need other provinces to help and to welcome asylum seekers. All provinces do need to do their fair share. We are working with provinces who are not in agreement because we need to be humane and treat them well. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. No action's being taken. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, we don't have any more classrooms for the children of asylum seekers in our schools. We don't have teachers for the classrooms that we don't have. We don't have enough food at our food banks. We have a housing crisis. As we speak, though, there are new people at Montreal's Trudeau Airport applying for asylum. They will join the growing ranks of victims of all these crises I just listed. The provinces are doing nothing, the Liberals are doing nothing, and the Conservatives are hiding. Mr. Speaker, what will it take for Canada to do something? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Mr. Speaker, there is a shortage of teachers in Quebec and in the rest of Canada. That's not new. Asylum seekers are not the reason there is a teacher shortage in Quebec. I wonder whether the member read the letter that I sent to my Quebec counterpart, Jean-François Roberge. There has been progress, though.
Yellowhead.
After 9 years, NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, time is up. This radical environment minister ignored experts who warned Jasper faced a devastating wildfire if nothing was done. His officials discussed cancelling prescribed burns for political optics, and now we've learned 50 firefighters and 20 fire trucks were turned away as a third of Jasper burned. Thousands are homeless and nearly $1 billion in damage. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Environment stand up and apologize to the people of Jasper for his failure?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker,
not this
the
Yahoo.
member opposite knows that the discussion between those Parks Canada employees
was to determine whether or not they would do prescribed burns or mechanical removals. He knows that. They know that. To try and insinuate that because they didn't want to do prescribed burns, we did nothing is simply false. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we invested 40 times more in forest fighting capacities around Jasper than they did when they were in power, Mr. Speaker. And the company he talks about has no relationship with Parks Canada. They're a company that worked for the Alberta government. Happy to give him the number of the Premier in Alberta.
First Nations have been doing controlled burns since before Canada was even a country. And we have been doing controlled burns for a long time. And you didn't want them.
The honourable member from Red Deer Lacombe.
And you let all that stuff burn anyway.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. The latest revelation, 50 firefighters and 20 fire trucks were turned away from Jasper National Park just before the town burned. These brave firefighters were ready, willing, and able to fight these fires, but were ordered to stand down. So now the only question that remains is, would the minister categorize the results of his leadership in this as incompetence or negligence?
The Honourable Minister for Official Languages.
Why are they not letting Guilbeault speak?
Colleagues, the Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And my honourable colleague has heard from the Minister for Parks Canada. That company in question was in the employ of the Government of Alberta, and the matter was resolved. Mr. Speaker, I have been in regular contact with Mayor Ireland and his council, as have other members in this government, other ministers, other MPs. Mr. Speaker, we are working with Mayor Ireland, his council, and Jasperites every week to make sure that Jasper comes back better than ever before, because that's what Albertans and Canadians expect of us.
Which Randy is this today? Randy Bobandy, cheeseburgers.
The honourable member from Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, 4 years ago, Parks Canada put out a tweet that said they would be installing a sprinkler system to protect the Jasper town site. Even the minister's own officials seem to know that water is better at stopping fires than his carbon tax, yet there is no indication that these sprinklers were ever installed, despite a tender notice being posted in 2021, 3 years before the devastating fire. Can the minister confirm how many permanent and mobile sprinklers were operational and deployed in Jasper to save homes and businesses? Just the number, please, even if it rhymes with zero.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, instead of spreading disinformation and misinformation in this House, Mr. Speaker, I actually went to Jasper, and the sprinkler system has been installed by Parks Canada in collaboration with the work that we've been doing with the City of Jasper. I'd be happy to show him where it is in the city, Mr. Speaker.
It looks like he gets his hair cut at Supercuts.
Colleagues.
Gets the apprentice to work on his head.
Colleagues, it is so important for members to only take the floor, so not only that we can hear the questions and answers, and I'm also referring to the honourable member of Lakelands, please, is we only take the time when we have the microphone to speak so that we can all hear, especially people who require the use of translation. It's being respectful for our colleagues to making sure that they can hear the questions and they can hear the answers. The honourable member from King's Hants.
Speaker, Stephen Harper referred to Atlantic Canada, and I quote, a culture of defeat. When the Conservatives were in government,
the honourable member, colleagues.
Control the Liberals, man. What are you doing?
Colleagues, the more time that I'm spending up on my feet, the less time we have for questions. So I'm going to ask members, please. The honourable member from King's Hants from the top, please.
Speaker, Stephen Harper referred to Atlantic Canada as, I quote, a culture of defeat. When the Conservatives were in government, when they amended the Atlantic Accords, they put our region's interests in the back seat. Just ask Bill Casey. As it relates to Bill C-49, our government has worked with the government of Nova Scotia. We've worked with Newfoundland and Labrador because the legislation represents billions of economic opportunity. The Conservatives stood in the way every single time. Can the Minister of Housing provide an update to this House about why this bill matters for Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question and for his advocacy for the economy in Nova Scotia. There's a few reasons we got involved in politics. Creating good jobs at home and protecting the environment are among them. The behaviour of Conservative MPs from Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and Labrador in this file is absolutely ridiculous. You have to ask yourself why they oppose good jobs at home. I expect it's because it protects the environment too, and their leader has told them they're not allowed to talk about climate change unless it's to visit school kids and tell them carbon dioxide is just plant food, nothing to worry about. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is going to make a meaningful difference, create good paying jobs on the East Coast and protect our environment. I wish Atlantic MPs on the Conservative.
Who wears a blue suit with a pink tie?
The Honourable Member from Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Yesterday, on October 7th, while burning the Maple Leaf, Sami Doon terrorist sympathizers openly called for death to Canada, death to the United States, and death to Israel.
Ridiculous.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, sadly calls for death to Canada, and our allies have now been normalized. Sami Doon operates as an arm of a listed terrorist organization in Canada. Will the Prime Minister protect Jewish Canadians from homegrown extremism and list Sami Doon as a terrorist organization?
Hear, hear. If you want to come to Canada and chant stuff like that and burn our flag, go back home.
Foreign Affairs.
This is Canada.
If there's one thing today we will be able to agree is that we both condemn what happened yesterday on the streets of Vancouver talking about. And that's why we will always condemn any form of anti-Semitism. And I'm convinced that everybody in this House will condemn any form of anti-Semitism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
They started smashing windows. Their faces are covered. They're chanting genocide and stuff. Like, why are they allowed to protest like that?
The Honourable Member from Toronto, St. Paul's.
Mr. Speaker, in March of this year, Sami Doon paraded through my riding to intimidate our Jewish community. Now we see videos of Sami Doon members in our streets calling for the death of Canada. Long live October 7th, and calling the Hamas terrorists their heroes while they burn the Canadian flag. This government has done nothing to put a stop to these pro-genocide, anti-Semitic, anti-Canadian mobs who threaten our Jewish communities nationwide. Will the Prime Minister commit to protecting our Jewish communities and label Sami Doon a terrorist organization?
It's not even just the Jewish community. They literally just attack anyone that tries to get against their protest.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
They literally assault people.
Those actions that have been taking place in our streets are wrong. We condemn them full stop. Any form of anti-Semitism is wrong. This is precisely why, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety had already referred the listing of Sami Doon to our national security advisors and asked for an emergency and urgent review. Mr. Speaker, we've already taken action, but we know this issue isn't political, and it's a shame that Conservatives only stand up when they think it suits their political advantage.
There's no politics here. It's straight criminal code. It's the law.
Colleagues, these are very important questions and very important answers. I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton, to please not speak out of turn and allow the questions and answers to occur uninterrupted. The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
If they took action, they would have listed them already. So if burning a Canadian flag, if calling for the death of Canadians, if fomenting hate in this country, and most of all being a front for an already listed terrorist organization is not enough to put them on the list, then what the hell is it going to take for them to ban them?
Here, here. Great question. Straight to the point. Like, they're literally smashing windows with their face
Before we
covered.
go to the answer, I'm just going to ask the honourable member to withdraw the unparliamentary language. The honourable member.
What? Oh, hell. Oh, okay. Okay, she withdrew.
Honourable Parliamentary
That's fair.
Secretary
That's fair.
to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to an issue as serious as this, we are not going to play politics with Canadian safety. But when it comes to listing of terrorist entities, the members opposite know full well it is not a political decision. It is based on the national security services of this country, but it's precisely why the minister had already sent it for an urgent review, understanding that this hate is unacceptable in Canada.
Yeah, data center, it's more than that. They assault people, they vandalize property, they smash the windows at McGill, they cover their faces up,
not to take the voice. I'll ask the honourable member from
and they chant genocide and burn the flag.
Had an opportunity to speak, and
that's a riot. That's not even a protest. That's a straight riot.
Please do not speak out of turn while other members have the floor. The honourable member from Halifax West.
Parliament recently passed Bill C-49, which will create an offshore wind energy sector in Atlantic Canada, in my region. This will mean jobs, investment, and clean energy. Despite all this, the Conservatives opposed C-49 and opposed renewable energy. The Conservatives have put their ideology ahead of Canadians. Can the Environment Minister explain why Canada must take advantage of economic opportunities that come with the energy transition? Thank you. The Honourable Environment and Climate Change Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the energy transition represents 400,000 more jobs in Canada by 2030, and the offshore wind sector will be a $1 trillion industry. This equates to hundreds of thousands of jobs in clean energy. But these jobs are not guaranteed. In order to create them, we need an ambitious climate plan. That's why we passed Bill C-49, which will allow for development of offshore wind energy in Canada. Unfortunately, the Bloc has joined forces with the Conservatives to oppose renewable energy. Our government will fight to take advantage of these economic opportunities and to create these jobs, even if the other parties are turning their backs on the fight against climate change.
The honourable member from Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, new data reveals that 1 in 4 Canadians are forced into precarious gig work. And under the Liberals, the cost of living has exploded while wages have fallen behind. More than ever, workers need and deserve more power, protection, and pay. And joining a union is the best way to get that. So while Liberals continue to undermine unions and Conservatives want to tear them down, New Democrats will always be Canada's only Labour Party. So will this government support the NDP's plan for sectoral bargaining so that gig workers can benefit from a union card?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, whether it's sticking up for replacement workers, whether it's doubling the union training investment fund, Mr. Speaker, this is the most Labour-friendly government in the history of our country. We are union proud. We are union friendly. We're going to continue to make sure that we grow this economy from the bottom up and the middle out, and that means with good union workers.
The honourable members from South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, after a summer of wildfires that destroyed thousands of hectares of forests in the iconic city of Jasper, the Liberals are planning to cut funding for emergency services. And to make matters worse, this government has failed to train even a single firefighter in 5 provinces. It's their job to protect communities, but they're letting people down. Now, we know Conservatives cut services all the time, but why are the Liberals risking Canadians' lives just to help their bottom line?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question from the member opposite, but it's absolutely not true. We have invested significantly in emergency preparedness. In fact, we have trained over 1,000 firefighters, which also includes Indigenous firefighters as well. We increased equipment to the provinces and territories, and we can working collaboratively to making sure that they have all the resources necessary to fight the wildfires that are being devastated by climate change. Thank you.
Chers colleagues, I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery of Dr. Heather Lank, parliamentary librarian, who will be retiring at the end of next week. Dr. Lank first joined the Federal Public Service Dr. Lank first joined the Federal Public Service in 1990, then moved to the Senate, taking on various leadership roles before joining the Library of Parliament in 2018 as parliamentary librarian.
On behalf of all members, I would like to thank Ms. Lank for her years of service and wish her the best of luck in her future endeavors. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lank.
It being 3:16, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion to concur the 11th report of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities.
All right, we don't need to listen to this debate. I've got a couple clips coming out in the channel soon. If you didn't see the one that I put out, we'll watch it actually real quick. So this is why Pierre Poilievre couldn't attend, or he could attend question period, but he wasn't going to be able to say anything. Let's watch this clip before we
During question period, the Leader of the Opposition had used language directed at the Minister of Foreign Affairs that was deemed to be unparliamentary. In fact, it was very similar in nature and language used earlier this year by a member who accused the Leader of the Opposition of pandering to an odious regime. At the time, that member was asked to withdraw that comment. I therefore asked yesterday that the Leader of Opposition do the same, namely to withdraw his comment at the earliest opportunity. To date, this has not happened. We will soon find ourselves at the time of day where the Leader of the Opposition normally undertakes one of his most important roles, namely leading off question period. Members will recall that when the Leader of the Opposition was himself the subject of unparliamentary language, to which I just referred, members of his caucus took great offence and made that perfectly clear to the chair occupant, who then very rightly insisted on a withdrawal. As such, I am sure members can appreciate that I must do the same in the present circumstances.
Our parliamentary system depends on respect for the rules that members set out for themselves, and the application of which has been entrusted to the Speaker and other chair occupants. Ignoring the authority of the chair, who is in charge of enforcing parliamentary rules, has a corrosive effect on our discussions. I would call on all members, and especially the leaders of the different parties represented in the House, to reflect on this. These situations only tarnish the reputation of the House and its members in the eyes of the public. This undermines the important work done by the House.
Opposition is an experienced member who is well versed in our practices and procedures.
Yes, he is.
He knows that in our system, the role of the Leader of the Opposition is to ask questions to the Ministry, to ensure it is held accountable for its actions, and to challenge its decisions. His role is not to make the government comfortable, quite the contrary. But his actions must also be exercised within the existing boundaries of parliamentary decorum.
Over the last few months, the member refused to heed decisions by the chair on non-parliamentary remarks during question periods on 2 occasions. In the first occasion, he was named. On the second occasion, his party had questions removed. Yesterday's events represent a third occasion.
The opposition should withdraw his comments made yesterday during question period. If he is not willing to do so, the chair will not recognize him for the remainder of today's sitting. I thank honourable members.
Okay, so just in case you guys are curious what he said, if you weren't here for question period yesterday, Joey's going to dodge the question.
If we don't do politics about
mayor's part.
Stand up for what was right. This would be that. This government has sought to divide Canadians by saying one thing to one group and precisely the opposite to another group. And here in this House, remaining radio silent on condemning anti-Semitic chants and on supporting Israel's right to truly defend itself by retaliating against the terrorists and tyrants. Why won't she do the right thing and stand beside the Jewish people today?
So he doesn't like that. He said that that was unparliamentary, and he says that this is unparliamentary. Hold on, where's the other clip? I don't know how this is unparliamentary. He's absolutely ridiculous.
The NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Prime Minister has ground the work of Parliament to a halt by refusing to respect your ruling. The government must hand over evidence to the police concerning the $400 million spending scandal that saw Liberal appointees give millions of dollars to their own companies. Wow. The Auditor General says there's 186 conflicts of interest in this scandal. Will the Prime Minister end the cover-up, respect your ruling, give the police the information so that we can have accountability and get back to work?
Okay, so Gold responds.
In the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's demonstrably false.
Okay, here we
the
go.
Leader of the Opposition.
A sadistic.
This is apparently what was unparliamentary.
For being very patient and not taking the microphone, I'm going to remind the honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's to do the same. The honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A year ago today, a sadistic and genocidal death cult, Hamas, carried out the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust and has 100 more hostages. Bring them home. Here at home, though, our Jewish friends and neighbors have been doubly victimized as anti-Semitic mobs take to the streets shouting, "From Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution: intifada, revolution." Will the government clearly and unequivocally condemn these genocidal chants from hateful mobs on our streets?
Hear, hear. Everyone's been thinking that. Why are they allowed to? How is that unparliamentary? Go around and plug up our
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, Judy Weinstein, Vivian Silver, Ben Mizrachi, Netta Epstein, Shir Georgi, Alexandre Luc, Idal Vital Kaploun, Tiferet Lapido. May their memories be a blessing. It was my honor to have met with their families here at home and in Israel. And on the anniversaries of Hamas' horrific attacks, my promise to their loved ones is the following. Year after year, Canadians will honor their memories, and to Jewish people, we stand with you. We won't relent until the last hostage returns home.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
She does relent every single day, just like her leader. I asked a very simple question. Mobs have taken to the streets in front of Jewish homes, hospitals, and businesses to shout anti-Semitic hate slogans. I quoted a number of them and invited the minister to rise to her feet and specifically condemn them, to stand with Jews against the anti-Semitism that has been allowed to proliferate on our streets. So once again, will she condemn these anti-Semitic chants?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Solicitor General.
Mr. Speaker, today is October 7th, an anniversary of a horrific attack on Jews. 1,200 people killed, over 200 people taken hostage. Our solidarity is with Jews in Israel and with Jewish people in Canada and right around the world. What we stand up against absolutely is the amount of hatred that we have seen in this country and countries around the world, where people will target Jewish Canadian schools, daycares, and synagogues for the acts that they have a problem with on another side of the world. We are better than that in this country. We need to stand up against that kind of hatred in support of Jewish people and in place of all people who defend their ability to worship how and whom they choose.
Okay, so I don't know how that was unparliamentary. And if we go back to listen to his ruling, just right here, he says that there was unparliamentary language, but he doesn't specify what exact words were unparliamentary.
Over the last few months, the member refused to heed decisions by the chair on non-parliamentary remarks during question periods on 2 occasions. In the first occasion, he was named. On the second occasion, his party had questions removed. Yesterday's events represent a third occasion.
The opposition should withdraw his comments made yesterday during question period.
What comments? What comments do you not like? You need to specify exactly what he said that you thought was unparliamentary. He doesn't specify it. He just says overall.
If he is not willing to do so, the chair will not recognize him for the remainder of today's
So he was barred from participating in QP because of what he said there. Did anybody see anything in that clip that was wrong? So I'm glad Pierre, at least, if he did show up, what would have happened is Pierre would have said, I'm not apologizing. All of the Conservatives would have walked out when the speaker banned him. And it would have just been nobody in question period today. So at least Pierre thought, you know what? I've got a really good team on my side. I'm not going to bend the knee to this liberal hack. I'm going to let some of my other people speak today. And we got to see at least Lanceman. We got to see Brock step up. Brock very rarely says anything during question period. So it was pretty cool to see Brock talk today. But yeah, I don't know, man. This guy's just going off the rails at this point. Play it again. I'll play it one more time, and then we're going to call it.
Of pandering to an odious regime. At the time, that member was asked to withdraw that comment. I therefore asked yesterday that the Leader of Opposition do the same, namely to withdraw his comment at the earliest opportunity. To date, this has not happened. We will soon find ourselves at the time of day where the Leader of the Opposition normally undertakes one of his most important roles, namely leading off question period. Members will recall that when the Leader of the Opposition was himself the subject of unparliamentary language, to which I just referred, members of his caucus took great offence and
refer to what? What did he say?
Made that perfectly clear to the chair occupant, who then very rightly insisted on a withdrawal. As such, I am sure members can appreciate that I must do the same in the present circumstances.
Our parliamentary system depends on respect for the rules that members set out for themselves, and the application of which has been entrusted to the Speaker and other chair occupants. Ignoring the authority of the chair, who is in charge of enforcing parliamentary rules, has a corrosive effect on our discussions. I would call on all members, and especially the leaders of the different parties represented in the House, to reflect on this. These situations only tarnish the reputation of the House and its members in the eyes of the public. This undermines the important work done by the House.
Opposition is an experienced member who is well versed in our practices and procedures.
Yes, he is.
He knows that in our system, the role of the Leader of the Opposition is to ask questions to the Ministry, to ensure it is held accountable for its actions, and to challenge its decisions. His role is not to make the government comfortable, quite the contrary. But his actions must also be exercised within the existing boundaries of parliamentary decorum. Au cours des quelques mois derniers,
Okay, so that's the part we just heard already. Yeah, I don't know. Everybody in the chat saying nobody heard anything unparliamentary. Fergus doesn't actually point out what language he thinks is unparliamentary, so I don't know. This guy's just on a power trip, man. This is ridiculous. Like, it makes my blood boil. You can't go against... Like, the Leader of the Opposition's job is to come and ask questions and hold government account. When you ban him from doing his job, what are you doing as a speaker? Oh, it makes my blood boil. Okay. So we're going to call it here. I've got some clips coming out in the channel shortly from some committees that I missed yesterday, and there'll be a committee on later that I'm not going to cover live, but I'm going to clip, and you guys can get the good stuff from that. So really appreciate everyone tuning in today. We had a pretty good stream. I'm sorry that, we didn't get to see Pierre today. It's kind of ridiculous. I don't have control over the speaker being a complete partisan liberal hack, so... we'll get to see him tomorrow for sure. We're not going to see Trudeau because he's too busy in the Middle East. I have no idea what he's doing there. It's not on his agenda. It just says that he's flying to Laos, Laos is I didn't even know it was a country, to be honest. But yeah, anyway, we're going to call it here, guys. Really appreciate everyone tuning in. Like I said, we'll see you tomorrow live for question period at the same time. And I'll probably be live for a committee tomorrow as well. I just got to double check to see on the agenda tomorrow. So I will see you guys tomorrow and try to wash the corruption that we've all just experienced for the last 2 hours almost off you. Try to rinse this off, because I mean, I know my blood's boiling and I try to be very calm when I'm listening to this kind of stuff, but they made it very hard for us today. This is ridiculous. So yeah,